she said quietly. This could ruin everything. I replied, then let's make it worth it. I remember the exact moment I realized I couldn't look away from her. She was leaning against the kitchen counter, half-light catching the curve of her jaw, the faintest crease at the corner of her eyes when she smiled. I'd seen confident people before, but she carried it like a whisper, like it belonged to her and no one else could touch it. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly, and I could feel the tremor under her calm. Not fear exactly, something sharper, like restraint. I stepped closer, just enough that her perfume brushed my senses. Warm sandalwood, a trace of something softer, like late afternoon sunlight on worn leather. My hand itched to reach out. She caught my gaze, holding it longer than necessary. I felt my pulse in places I didn't know existed. And yet, I murmured, here I am. Her lips pressed together. She glanced toward the open window, the cool autumn wind rattling the panes. The room smelled faintly of coffee, paper, and her. Everything ordinary made extraordinary by proximity. My fingers brushed hers accidentally, and I swear the brush lasted longer than physics would allow. She didn't pull away. This could ruin everything, she whispered, as if speaking louder might summon the consequences she was trying to dodge. I tilted my head, half smiling. Then let's make it worth it. Her laugh was soft, but it didn't reach her eyes entirely. She leaned back against the counter, folding her arms, yet I saw the subtle shift of her weight toward me. Almost imperceptible, a magnet she pretended wasn't there. I watched the way her hair caught the light, strands falling over her cheek. I wanted to brush them aside, wanted to trace the line of her neck with my eyes without her noticing. I shouldn't, she said again. Her voice carried that brittle note of vulnerability that made me ache. Shouldn't what? I asked, my words casual, but my hands tingled to close. The distance, even just a hair. Her eyes darted down for a heartbeat, then back to mine, sharper now. This, whatever this is. It's complicated. I leaned a fraction closer, and she didn't move. I felt her inhale and exhale, the warmth of her body brushing the air between us. The silence stretched, and in it, I could hear everything unspoken. Her hesitations, the pull she couldn't name, the permission she almost gave me in the tilt of her chin. I wanted to say more, but the words weren't necessary. We communicated in flickers of eyelashes, in the brief crossing of fingers, in the almost touch of knees. The space between us hummed. She shifted suddenly, eyes widening just slightly. A car horn blared outside. I held my breath. She bit her lip, and I could feel the moment twisting like a ribbon around us. Delicate, taut, dangerous. Then the door creaked. My pulse jumped, and hers did too, I knew it. We froze, two people suspended in a tension neither fully acknowledged. Her hand twitched at the edge of the counter, mine hovering midair, caught between retreat and reaching. The world outside the room seemed to vanish, leaving only the almost touch, the near imperceptible heat radiating from her. And then someone knocked. The sound was sharp, breaking the bubble around us. She glanced at me, her eyes wide, lips parted. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. For a moment, we were just two people suspended, caught between the rules of the world and the gravity of something forbidden. And I knew, with a certainty that made my chest ache, that nothing would ever be the same again. I stayed in the kitchen longer than I should have, pretending to check my phone while stealing glances at her. She moved with a kind of deliberate grace, pouring herself another cup of coffee, the steam curling around her face. Every movement was measured, every gesture an unreadable message. I'd learned early not to trust silence, especially hers, but right now, silence was pulling me in like a tide I didn't want to resist. You always linger like this, she said, half smile, half warning. I hesitated. I noticed things, and I meant it. The way her fingers brushed the rim of her cup, the slight tremor when she reached for sugar, the way her perfume seemed stronger when she was thinking hard. She shook her head, a faint laugh escaping, soft and vulnerable. I've been lonely, she admitted, almost to herself. Then she looked at me, and it was like she'd said too much. Divorced. Not by choice, I guess. Just life. I nodded, because I understood more than I should. Loneliness isn't a thing people announce. It's the quiet ghost that follows you everywhere. I get it, I said softly, and meant it in every way. She stiffened at the words, or maybe at the weight behind them. The moment stretched, and I could see her walls, the careful composure she wore like armor. My heart twisted. Part of me thrilled at seeing the real her, part of me terrified that my curiosity was overstepping. "You notice me too much," she whispered, brushing past me to grab a mug. Her arm lingered against mine, just barely, and I felt a current run from her shoulder to my hand. She noticed. She pulled back like she'd burned herself on a flame. It was the age gap, I realized, though we never mentioned it. The quiet judgment of the world outside, the awkward ripple of gossip, the unspoken "you shouldn't" that hovered in the corners of her apartment. And yet here we were, in a room just big enough to hold both of us and too small to hide the tension between us. "I shouldn't feel this," she murmured, eyes darting toward the window, where city lights flickered against the dark. "And yet, I do," I swallowed. Her words trembled on the edge of confession. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to reassure her, to tell her it was okay, to let her know I was drawn to her in ways I couldn't control. But instead, I just let my hand hover near hers, close enough she could feel the warmth. Without me touching. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she let her fingers brush mine. Just a whisper, a ghost of contact, and her eyes met mine. No words passed between us, but the air throbbed with everything we weren't saying. I saw the vulnerability there, the longing, the hesitation. And I realized the pull between us wasn't just physical. It was the meeting of two people who had learned to keep their distance, but couldn't resist proximity. She leaned back slightly, just enough to reclaim some space, but her gaze stayed fixed on mine. "Careful," she said, voice low, a warning, a challenge, a confession all at once. I smiled faintly. I've never been good at that. And in that tiny, stolen brush of fingers, in the tension that hummed in the air between sips of coffee and half-words, something shifted. A bond formed in silence, electric and fragile, promising more than either of us dared to admit. The apartment was quiet again, but not peaceful. The hum of the fridge and the distant city sirens were loud enough to remind me I wasn't alone, yet small enough that every tiny sound she made felt amplified. She stood by the window, tracing a finger along the sill, and I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for some signal that I could move closer. "You're quiet," she said, almost a whisper, but sharp enough to make me jump. "I'm thinking." I lied, though my mind wasn't thinking at all. It was memorizing her. The way her hair fell just past her shoulders, the faint tremor in her hands, the tilt of her head when she studied me. She glanced at me, and I caught the flicker of something behind her eyes, something unsaid, fragile, dangerous. She was dancing on the edge of giving herself permission, but afraid of falling too far. The sudden ping of her phone made us both start. She cursed softly, flipping it over without looking. I wanted to ask who it was, but I didn't. I didn't want the moment broken. Whoever it was, they didn't know what was happening here. "You? Close," she said after a pause, her voice husky, half teasing, half warning. I felt it too. The pull, the magnetic tug of her body leaning toward mine. Our knees nearly brushed as I stepped around the counter. My hand itched to lift her chin, to close that last inch, but I stayed frozen. The air between us was thick, nearly solid. "I shouldn't," she started, words faltering. Her lips parted slightly, and I thought I might drown in the sight of them. "I know," I said softly, letting my fingers brush against hers. Just a whisper of contact. But it was enough. Enough for her breath to hitch, enough for my pulse to skyrocket. A knock at the door startled us both. Her head snapped toward it, eyes wide, and I almost laughed at how human we were. Two adults caught in a storm of our own making. We stepped apart, just barely, pretending we hadn't been inches from something neither of us could admit. The moment lingered, like smoke that refuses to dissipate. I watched her bite her lip, trying to reclaim composure. I wanted to tell her it was okay, wanted to close the distance and erase all the hesitation. But guilt and caution hung between us like a shroud. "People would talk," she murmured, her gaze dropping to the floor. "They shouldn't, but they will." I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped closer again, just enough for our shoulders to brush. My hand hovered near hers, and this time she didn't pull away. She tilted her head, letting me see the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. A heartbeat, too. My chest felt tight. The world outside didn't exist. She exhaled slowly, a soft sound that might have been a confession. I could feel her warmth, smell her faint perfume, feel her heartbeat echoing in that small space. And yet, we stayed right there, caught between restraint and desire, closer than we'd ever allowed ourselves. I wanted to kiss her, wanted it so badly it hurt, but something held me back. Something told me we weren't ready to admit it aloud. But as I reached out, just a whisper away from her, I realized no one had to say a word. We were already entangled, already too close, already suspended on the edge of something that would change everything. And neither of us was ready to let go. The room was warmer than it had any right to be. The city hum outside felt distant, like we'd been suspended in a bubble carved just for us. I watched her move, slow, deliberate, every gesture loaded with intent and hesitation. I could smell the faint vanilla of her hair, see the subtle tremble of her fingers as she adjusted the cuff of her sleeve. "I can't not think about you," I admitted before I could stop myself. The words hovered, heavy and urgent. I tried to read her face, but she was a careful mask of composure. Her eyes flickered, and for a fraction of a second, I saw everything behind the restraint. The longing, the fear, the danger of it all. She took a breath, the kind that shivered just past her lips, and leaned a fraction closer. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered, voice low, trembling just slightly. Her hand brushed against mine, deliberately, and I felt the current shoot straight through me. "I know exactly what I'm saying," I murmured, leaning closer, careful not to overstep, careful not to break the fragile tension. "I can't stop. I've tried." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She looked at me then, really looked, like she might see straight through to the parts one tried to hide. The world outside the apartment could have ended. I wouldn't have noticed. Her warmth pressed against my arm when she shifted slightly, a subtle leaning, and I realized she was testing me, seeing how far I'd go without forcing the line. "I shouldn't," she whispered, almost inaudible, yet every word struck me. Her lips parted slightly, her eyelashes brushing her cheeks, her hand trembling just above mine. "Neither should I said, my voice dropping, low and rough with something I hadn't admitted even to myself. My fingers hovered near hers, daring, needing, desperate to make contact. She didn't move away. Not yet. She bit her lip, and I saw her pulse in the hollow of her throat. Desire, fear, everything tangled into a single fragile wire. My hand itched to lift her chin, to brush the hair from her face, to close the last inch between us. My pulse thundered in my ears. I felt her heartbeat too, almost painfully close. "Do you want this?" she asked finally, voice breaking slightly, fragile and bold all at once. "I've wanted it for weeks," I admitted, my words a low whisper near her ear. The warmth of my breath made her shiver. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her eyes closed briefly, and when she opened them again, there was nothing holding her back, not entirely. She leaned closer, brushing against me, and I felt the heat of her body pressing into mine. My hand hovered near her cheek, ready to move, trembling with every second that passed. And then, the knock at the door. Sharp, abrupt, insistent. We froze. The spell shattered in an instant, our bodies still painfully close, but suddenly aware of the world outside. Her eyes widened, mine followed hers, and I could feel the electricity in the air, waiting, suspended, a moment that could change everything if we ever crossed the line. I could lean in. She could. We were both ready. And yet, neither of us moved. The door rattled again. The knock at the door had barely faded when her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, a flicker of panic crossing her face. I leaned closer, curious, and caught the name flashing across the screen. "Mara." "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, but my chest tightened. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. "It's complicated," she said softly, almost too softly. There was a tremor in her voice I hadn't heard before. Something unspoken hung in the space between us. "Complicated how?" I pressed, stepping closer, just enough for our shoulders to brush. She didn't pull away, and I felt the heat of her against me, the rapid thrum of tension in her body. She looked down at her hands, twisting the phone in a nervous grip. "Mara, she thinks something's going on between us." She overheard. Well, she didn't hear everything, but enough. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and I could see her pulse jump at the sound of her own voice. I swallowed hard, my stomach twisting. Someone new. Someone else was involved now. someone who could complicate everything. Yet, seeing her like this, vulnerable, worried, scared, I felt a surge of protectiveness, a pull I couldn't resist. "Do you want me to?" I started, then stopped, unsure what I could do besides be there. My hand itched to touch her, to brush a strand of hair from her face, to reassure her with something beyond words. She shivered slightly, as if she felt my need without me speaking it. "I don't know," she admitted, almost inaudible. Her body leaned a fraction closer, then recoiled instinctively, torn between the magnetic pull and the caution that had kept her guarded for months. My fingers brushed hers as I reached out, and the contact made both of us jump, just enough to notice the spark between our skin. "I shouldn't," she began, voice shaky, and stopped, as if the words might undo her. "Neither should I," I whispered, low and close, my chest nearly touching hers. Her breath hitched. I could feel the rapid pulse under the thin fabric of her shirt. My eyes traced her face, memorizing every detail. The curve of her jaw, the faintest sheen of worry in her eyes, the tremble in her lips. She looked at me, wide-eyed, caught between fear and desire. Her hands moved, almost unconsciously, brushing against my chest, sending shivers up both of us. The room seemed smaller now, charged, suffocating in its intimacy. "I don't want to lie anymore," I said, voice rough. "Not to you, not to myself." Her lips parted, and I could see the conflict warring behind her eyes. She wanted it as much as I did, but the risk, Mara, the world. Outside, her own restraint, kept her tethered to caution. I stepped closer, and she didn't move away this time. Our knees brushed. Our hands lingered near each other. The tension was unbearable, electric. "Then we can't wait," I said softly, my forehead nearly resting against hers. Her breath mingled with mine, trembling, tentative, longing. She swallowed, eyes fixed on mine. "Are we ready for this?" I didn't answer. I just leaned in slightly more, letting the silence carry the weight of everything we couldn't say. And in that moment, the choice was no longer theoretical. Everything was teetering on the edge. The apartment felt smaller than ever, every surface, every shadow charged with the weight of us. We were inches apart, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her body, the subtle rise and fall of her chest. My hand hovered near hers, trembling, afraid to bridge the final gap, yet aching to. "Are you sure?" she whispered, voice low, fragile, almost breaking. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for an answer I didn't yet have words for. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied softly, letting my gaze drink in every flicker of emotion across her face. The hesitation, the longing, the fear of what the world might say. She swallowed hard, lips parting slightly, as if she'd been holding back a confession too long. Her hand brushed against mine, tentative at first, then firmer, seeking, anchoring herself to me. I caught her fingers, letting them linger in mine, feeling the pulse of connection, the quiet electricity that had built over weeks of stolen glances and near touches. "I shouldn't," she murmured, but the edge of her voice betrayed her, the tremor of want, the softness of surrender. "Neither should I," I said, just above a whisper, letting my thumb trace her knuckles. I could feel her shiver, and my chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to close the distance, to lean in, to erase the inches between us, yet part of me hung on the fragility of the moment, afraid one wrong move would shatter it entirely. She tilted her head, letting me brush a strand of hair from her face. Her skin was warm under my fingertips, soft, almost trembling at the contact. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and unguarded for the first time, and I realized I had never truly seen her. Not like this, not without walls, not without hesitation. "I can't," she whispered, voice breaking, a breathless admission of everything she had kept locked away. "You don't have to," I murmured, leaning just enough for our foreheads to nearly touch, letting the air between us thrum with unspoken words. "I'm here. I won't let anything hurt you." And in that breathless silence, everything shifted. I saw the decision flicker in her eyes, the choice between caution and surrender, between stepping back and finally leaning into the truth we had both denied. Her hand tightened around mine, and I took the cue, bridging the final fraction of space. Our lips almost met, hovering in a suspended heartbeat that stretched out, electric and alive. I felt the tremor of her body echo through mine. The rapid pulse of desire mingled with fear. She began, and I placed a finger over her lips gently, grounding her, letting her know it was safe to fall. Then let's not hold back, I whispered, low, raw, honest. And finally, the distance collapsed. Our foreheads rested together, breath mingling, hands entwined. The world outside ceased to exist. For the first time, we saw each other fully, every hesitation, every longing, every imperfect, human piece that made us, us. No more walls, no more restraint, just the messy, fragile, beautiful truth of wanting one another, and finally allowing it. The city outside had dimmed to a quiet hum. Streetlights flickered through the window, casting soft shadows that danced across the apartment walls. We didn't move from the couch, still caught in the aftermath of everything we had finally admitted, every hesitation and longing, every imperfect, human piece that made us, us. No more walls, no more restraint, just the messy, fragile, beautiful truth of wanting one another, and finally allowing it. The city outside had dimmed to a quiet hum. Streetlights flickered through the window, casting soft shadows that danced across the apartment walls. We didn't move from the couch, still caught in the aftermath of everything we had finally admitted, every hesitation and longing now surrendered. Her head rested against my shoulder, warm and soft, and I could feel her breath even out against me. My fingers found hers, lacing together as if they had always belonged there. It was simple, human, perfect in its imperfection. I never thought, she murmured, voice low, hesitant, that this could feel normal. Normal? I teased lightly, nudging her shoulder with mine. I don't think normal even applies here. She laughed softly, a sound I realized I had been craving for weeks. I mean, comfortable, she said, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her fingers lingered against my cheek, and I leaned into the touch, closing my eyes briefly to savor the warmth. We stayed like that for a while, quiet, connected, letting the world exist somewhere else. Every trace of fear, every thought about judgment or age gap whispers, seemed to dissolve in the rhythm of our closeness. It didn't matter anymore. Only this mattered. The honesty of our presence, the electric weight of our touch, the undeniable gravity between us. I was scared, she admitted after a long pause. Of everything. Of feeling this way, of what people would think, of losing control. I squeezed her hand. I get it. Me too. But, I paused, brushing my lips against her temple gently. I'd rather risk it with you than live without it. Her body shivered slightly at the touch, and she leaned into me, letting herself rest completely. I could feel her heartbeat against mine, steady now, quieting in the warmth of our closeness. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee, late evening air, and her. Ordinary things that now felt extraordinary. We didn't need to speak. The long silence was full enough. Every unspoken thought, every near confession, every tremor of desire and fear had found its place in this shared, fragile calm. She tilted her head and pressed her forehead against mine, eyes closed. I guess this is what it's supposed to feel like, she whispered. Exactly like this, I replied, voice soft, almost reverent. I brushed my thumb over her knuckles, memorizing the small details I had always noticed but never dared touch. For the first time, it felt like time had slowed, and we could just exist here, messy, human, together. No walls, no fear, no shouldn't hanging over us. Just the quiet certainty that whatever came next, we had this moment, this connection, and each other. She sighed, soft and content, and I pulled her closer, letting her rest against me fully. My lips brushed the top of her head, a small, grounding gesture that said everything I couldn't put into words. Finally, I whispered, we're okay, you and me, right here. She smiled against my chest, and I felt the tension of months dissolve into a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath for. And in that quiet room, wrapped in the simple perfection of being together, we stayed, hands intertwined, foreheads pressed, hearts aligned. Engagement questions for YouTube. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?